All right, everybody, welcome back. So at this point, I have cut out a lot of the extra noises that I found, mouth noises, breath sounds I didn't find very flattering. I've normalized, so overall my volume is pretty settled, and I've also adjusted volumes based on the clip gains. And so now I'm at a point where I have a pretty good and even composite take. But there are still a few things that I want to correct overall. I'm now moving from focusing on individual clips and sections to making sure the take flows overall. All right, so we're going to apply a noise gate to get rid of any extra ambient sounds. We're going to do some volume automation and effect automation to, again, just smooth out some additional tone and volume issues. So let's head over to the noise gate. I'm going to go add an insert onto the track. All right, specifically, let's go over to dynamics and then gate, expander / gate. So I believe I did a video on this before, but essentially what a noise gate does is that it blocks out sounds underneath a certain threshold. So a compressor works by reducing sounds that go over a certain threshold, right, a set point. What a noise gate says is that I'm not going to allow any sounds to come in unless they exceed the dynamic of this particular threshold. So let's take a little bit of a look to see how the gate may be kicking in just naturally. All right, so I'll play from the beginning and just take a look here and notice how this gate isn't going to open up and let sound through unless it's a certain level. So let's check it out.
You've always got to let the last man go. It's honorable. He's the last guy to make it.
So right now this is pretty choppy because the default has the gate a little bit too high for what we need for our speech right now. So I'm going to lower the threshold so we don't need as much gain to open up the gate and let our voice signal pass through.
You've always got to let the last man go. It's honorable. He's the last guy to make it out of the bag. The warrior. He's the last samurai man.
So you have to be careful because this gate may not be the tool we need right now. It's really clipping off a lot of the ends and kind of giving us an unnatural pumping sound. I'll try and lower the threshold a little bit to see if we could still use a gain in this sitch. But this is why it's always great to just do as many manual tasks as you can, because you can hear right now these automated processes, they sometimes suck the life out of a mix. So let's try it again. And I'm just trying to get the ambient sound and noise from my environment. I'm recording next to some huge windows right off a main road. So you'll hear a lot of car sounds and outdoor sounds. And sometimes you actually want to keep that ambience in to make the audio sound more natural, or just because you record it in a really nice environment. But in this case, I'm trying to dull the ambient sound included with this vocal track because I know we're going to add ambience in afterward. All right, so let's take a listen to how it sounds now.
You've always got to let the last man go. It's honorable. He's the last guy to make it out of the bag. The warrior. He's the last samurai man. How is he skilled enough to be the last M&M in the bag out of all the other M&Ms in the bag? All the different colors, all the different sizes. I always let the last one go because he was the strongest, the swiftest.
Yeah, so that sounds a lot more natural. You can also mess around with the attack and release time, especially the attack time, because if you slow that down, it'll make it so the gate doesn't come on and off as aggressively. It's very similar to a compressor. So that's another way of just kind of smoothing out the way the gate is applied to the sound. But for now, I'll keep this on here. Remember, it sounds unnatural now, but when you add in your own ambience, when you add in music and sound effects, that pumping will be covered up by those other sounds. So just keep that in mind. All right. So that's me applying a noise gate just to try and get rid of any extra ambient sounds that are recorded with me, that I recorded. All right. The other thing that I want to do now is talk about volume and effect automation. So let's actually start with effect automation, because if you notice here in this first area, this first chunk, there's actually a lot of low end because I was really closing into the mic. In certain cases, you may want to keep that because it's a good effect, right? It gives you that inner time, right? Movie effect. So use your judgment. If you think it sounds good to have that there for an effect, keep it. But if you're concerned about, well, there's so much bass frequency in the beginning here, but then it's, it thins out toward the end, as I notice here, you may want to use something like effect automation to automate the EQ parameters. So that way you can take out a little bit of that low end in the early section. So let me show you how to do that. I'm going to put an EQ, I'll just use the 7 band here, onto this audio track. And let me put a high pass filter in. All right, because I'm trying to get rid of that lower proximity effect, usually around like 8 hertz or 80 hertz. I'll even go up to 100 right now. Meh, it's a little too high. 90. We'll compromise. Okay, so let's take a listen now, or let's do without and with.
You've always got to let the last man go. It's honorable.
All right, and then I'll do with the EQ filter in.
You've always got to let the last man go. It's honorable. He's the last guy to make it out of the bag. The warrior. He's the last samurai man. How is he skilled enough to be the last Eminem in the...
All right, so my big concern is that there's not really a lot of low end when we jump over here, and in the rest of the track, a lot of low end in the beginning. Again, if you like that effect, go for it. But if you're trying to make sure your tone or the person's tone is really consistent, then you may want to use effect automation to smooth out these differences. So right now, I have this filter applied to the whole track. But what I can do instead is have the filter only applied to the parts where I feel like there's just too much bass and I want to cut that out. All right. So the way I do that is I set my parameters. And very important here, take a look at what you're actually adjusting, because sometimes that can be a little tricky. Go to right underneath where it says auto, there's a gray plugin automation enable button. And then what you'll see here are all the different parameters that correspond to these different knobs and buttons and filters. And what you can do is select the individual parameters you want to affect and control, and then put them in this add area. So what I'm going to do to make this easy, I'm going to do master bypass, so that way I can turn the audio on and off. Oh, come on. Hello, Jasmine speaking.